The Volkswagen ID.4 is a huge deal for the automaker. It's the first MEB-based vehicle to come to the United States from Germany, and it's so important. They need to sell a lot of these, but it's so important that Volkswagen says it's as important as the Beetle was when it came to the United States. Now, is that true? Let's find out. You know, the Beetle, the vehicle that Volkswagen sold over 23 million units of globally during its 81-year run. The same Beetle that made its way to the United States over 72 years ago, way back in January of 1949. And it bucked up against literally everything that was on the market and became a quirky phenomenon. So is the ID.4 the brand new Beetle? Well, probably not. That's about as likely as the Mach-E being called a Mustang by Ford purists. But the comparison between the two vehicles isn't too far off. The Beetle was sold as an alternative to what was already on the road. It's low cost, weird shape, and the fact that you could fix it with some bubble gum and a pair of pliers made it, well, a huge hit with many people all over the world, including here in the United States. It sold so well that in 1972, Volkswagen celebrated selling 15 million Beetles with the Marathon Edition. Now, this might be one of those Beetles, and while it's a little worse for the wear, it does look pretty good for a 49-year-old economy car. So how does this electric vehicle compare with this nearly a half-century-old Beetle? Let's find out. First, let's start with the exterior. Electric vehicles don't really need a grille. You don't have the traditional grille that you would have on a gas-powered vehicle. You might have something down here, but mostly all you have to cool down in this vehicle is the batteries and not the entire engine. The Beetle, well, it also doesn't need the traditional grille in front because the engine's way back here in the back and it's air-cooled. The interiors, while separated by decades, essentially give people what they want at the time the vehicle is sold. Now, back when the Beetle was sold, this one, 1972, it had a speedometer with, your gas gauge, oil gauge, a radio, a few knobs, your light switch, and that's pretty much it. It's everything you needed in a vehicle without any frills. The ID.4 also goes minimalist with its interior. Now it has the requisite infotainment screen and it has a digital dash cluster, but it's actually pretty small compared to what else is on the market, and it's attached to the steering column. It's sort of like what you find in the Mach-E, these nice small digital clusters that really just give you the bare information, which is great. It gives you the speed, your range, your navigation, and your driver's assistant information, but it does it in a way that's very minimalistic. It's just sort of there. It's easy to read. There's not a lot going on like you would see from Mercedes or BMW. It's, for this time now, it is sort of like the Beetle. Now let's talk about driving. The original Beetle had 40 horsepower, 40, so it wasn't exactly burning through tires. But all it really had to do was travel at 60 miles an hour on the Autobahn with 2 adults and 3 children. That's it. This Beetle, this 1972 Super Beetle, it has 60 horsepower from a 1600cc engine. It's a flat 4. You're not exactly racing pony cars with this thing. You're just sort of cruising along, enjoying yourself and your Beetle. Whee! The ID.4 has 201 horsepower for the all-wheel drive version I'm in right now. That's not a lot of power considering there's a giant battery sitting underneath me. But in a world full of Taycans and Teslas and Mach-E's, we sort of expect electric vehicles to be quick, but they don't have to be, and that's what the ID.4. The ID.4 is for the person who isn't doing 0 to 60 runs in 4 seconds. That's not what this car is for. Like the Beetle, it's for, 2 adults and 3 children and cruising on the interstate at 80 miles an hour, or going to Costco and picking up a lot of, beans, whatever people buy at Costco. Where the Beetle needed to cruise at 60 miles an hour on the Autobahn, the ID.4 needed the range to get people around without a lot of anxiety, and it does that with 250 miles. Where the difference really plays out is the price. Over here you have essentially the basics. You have a steering wheel, a stick shift, room for 5, and you know what, let's just call it a frunk, whatever. But in 1972, you could buy this vehicle for about $2,200. In 2021 prices, that's $14,000. That's an insane deal. What can you buy right now for $14,000? The Chevy Spark? The Chevy Spark isn't going to be around a half a century later like this thing is. I mean, maybe it will, but it's not going to have the same look and feel and iconic, well, everything about it. No one's getting excited about the Chevy Spark. Over here, we have the ID.4. Now, it's a lot more expensive. It starts at $41,000 for the all-wheel drive version that we have right here. Now, a cheaper version, a rear-wheel drive version, is coming out maybe later this year, maybe early next year for about, we're guessing, $35,000. Now, that's a lot more than, say, $14,000, but you're paying for technology, you're paying for batteries, you're paying for infotainment system, and you're paying for a lot of safety. That's essentially a tin can with a motor. This is the future. The ID.4 is eligible for state and federal tax incentives, and Volkswagen does have a pretty sweet lease program for under $400 a month. As a bonus, any new vehicles sold, any of these new ID.4 sold, come with 3 years of charging at Electrify America charging stations, so that itself is a pretty good deal. The ID.4 hits all the right notes of the people's car, but it's Coldplay compared to the original Beetle's Kraftwerk. Sure, it borrows a lot of elements from the original, but it doesn't tug at the soul like the Beetle or like Kraftwerk. Now, in 2023, the electric microbus, the ID. Buzz, will be hitting the United States, and that will be the Beetle of the 21st century. ID.4, it's not for racing. ID.4, it's for picking up your kids at soccer practice.